the public wishing. Oh, thank you, Peter.
Hello. Ginger
Hi,
here.
Ginger.
Okay. Here we are.
Hi.
Sorry.
Is
Sorry,
Mr.
I'm
Pronk
late.
here?
No, he's not.
No, all right. I'm gonna send him a quick text because I believe he's on land.
But you can see on your screen, Andy, you can see all of us, right?
Yeah.
So everybody that you can see is who's here.
Yeah, well, I see four of us. I have to press another arrow to see the rest of you. Sorry.
I see.
All right. Public participation guidelines. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in discussion. The town reserves the right to remove any members of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. This is Andy Lowell, Chairman of the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Sidlowski.
Yes.
Mr. Bossy.
Yes.
Mr. Brace.
Yes.
Mr. Franzuto.
Yes.
Ms. Andrews.
Yes.
Is Mr. Pronk here?
No.
All right, I see a phone number, 221.
That's it. That's Ginger.
All right. Any staff present?
No, but Tara told me she was going to be here.
All right. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you. Take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for clear conduct and our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board, Tuesday, October 5th, 2021. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved, Mr. Chairman. This is Ginger.
Seconded. It's Tom.
Okay, the motion's been made by Ginger Andrews to approve tonight's agenda. Tom Sidlowski has seconded it. All in favor, Mr. Brace,
Aye.
Mr. Franzuto,
Aye.
Mr. Bossy.
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. Draft minutes, approval of the minutes for September 21st. Everybody had a chance to review them. Any changes to be made, please state so now. If there are no changes, I will accept a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
So moved. Second, Mr. Chairman, this is
All
Judy.
right, motion's been made by David Bossy to approve the draft minutes of September 21st, 2021, seconded by Ginger Andrews. All in favor, Peter Brace,
Aye.
Tom Sidlowski,
Aye.
Dave Franzuto.
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. Chairman's report, it's got a couple of obituaries I'd like to mention. Thomas, known by everybody as Les Eldridge, 89 years old, moved here in the early 70s, at least, from Edgartown, ran several boats. He was a cod fisherman. He was an avid scalloper for decades here. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, and brought tears to my eyes to read that Tim Russell has passed away, 68 years old. Tim Russell attended many of our meetings along with his wife, Elaine, ran Towboat USA, and also involved in commercial scalloping for at least 3 decades. So I'd like to have a moment of silence for them if we could, please. Thank you very much. Peter, we have agenda updates under the chairman's report. What was this about, if you don't mind reminding me?
Oh, God, now I can't even remember.
All right, well, that's okay.
It was something. Well, it'll come to me
All right,
eventually.
looking back in my notes, and for some reason I'm not seeing anything. Okay, Marine Department report. Do we have any representation?
No, we don't.
Natural Resources report. Has
Oh,
Tara joined in yet?
No, I know what I put that there for.
All right,
I guess I put that there for to say that, that given the response that I got from the select board at the September 8th meeting, at the continuation of Ted Lambrecht's public hearing, they responded well when I had things to say about what was going on with our board, and that had to do with Ted, but I think it's important that we shouldn't wait for the department heads that attend our meetings to report to the select board what we're doing. I think we should tell the select board what we're doing, either in updates that we send to town administration that gets to all the select board members and Libby and Erica, or if it's really important and we want the island to know about it, that we decide who's going to go to the next select board meeting during public comment and give a report. Stuff that we're working on, so people know, so that if it ends up being something that we recommend to the select board through one of our department heads, they knew that we were working on it. They can recall that one of us, went and talked on behalf of the board at a select board meeting, or the board sent a letter to the town administration saying, hey, we're working on this, we're working on some recommendations, we want to give you a heads up. That's what I had.
okay.
So what do you?
Now I remember this discussion well, Peter, and simply for good communication purposes, I think, like the proposed amendments for Airbnb, liveaboard regulations, slip lottery, it would be good to inform the select board that this is on our agenda. This is something we're working on, so that they're in good understanding ahead of time.
Mr. Chairman, this is Ginger.
Yes, Ginger, please.
I think Peter's idea is a very good one because, you know, if people don't hear us, they don't know that we exist and that we're actually doing something and caring about it.
Yes, and that was the sentiment behind this. You know, and it stems from a couple of instances that, you know, recently brought up before the select board, something that was on our agenda we'd spoken about years ago. And so some better communication on our part could go a long way and in its effectiveness. So I'm looking forward to doing that in a simple way. It should be pretty simple. So I think we've got a few things going on here. You know, we should probably reach out if Mr. McKenna is able to make it to our next meeting. I believe they should be aware of that. So we'll discuss that more in a moment. Thank you, Peter. That was bouncing back to the chairman's report. Representation from Natural Resources yet, Peter?
No, not yet.
Okay,
I'll send her a text right now.
all right. So we've kept this, so this is tomorrow evening, this meeting, correct? Yes. Under old business, propose amendments to boat Airbnb, liveaboard regulations, slip lottery stakeholders. We've kept it on here just to, at our last meeting, we had a little concern that the Airbnb and liveaboard portion may have been removed. I have not seen it in writing. I've been told it has not been removed. Tom and Dave, Mr. Bossy, and probably Mr. Franzuto as well. You've been looking this stuff over more closely and access it well on the computer. Have you been able to see it and have a good feeling of confirmation that it's there?
No, I haven't seen, I'll take a look now. I haven't seen the agenda yet for tomorrow, but they were very clear in the stakeholders meeting that the only reason it wasn't included in the stakeholders meeting was because everybody agreed that those
Yeah.
were good regulations.
Right.
So, right, you had spoken about that, the stakeholders, and they were very clear about it. So I'll take a look at the agenda while we're going.
Okay. And what time do the select board meetings start? 6?
I think they're at 5:30 now.
5:30. All right. I have to, Mr. Franzuto.
Yeah, I shared Mr. Bossy's concern that it had vaporized or gone away or was being hidden or something. But if you feel, I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend that meeting Friday, but if you feel better about it now, Dave, I'm okay with it.
Well, I've got the packet up. I'll let you know when I get to it, whether it's included.
All right.
I'm
It's
scrolling
being-
through the hundreds of pages.
What they're saying is it was approved because there was no discussion and dissension, right?
It didn't make the stakeholders meeting because there was no discussion or dissension, but in fact, it will be part of the final code that they're looking to approve.
Okay,
That was pretty well how they stated it in the meeting at stakeholders.
then I
Yeah.
feel better about that.
Me too.
Well, Erica Mooney stated that it's still in there. And then at the stakeholders meeting with Ms. Dawn Hill Holgate and Charlie Gibson was there as well. And they say it's in there. So we've got to hopefully, take their word for it. But it's unfortunate that it just doesn't come right out at you right there in black and white. Well, here it is. I don't understand why it's kind of
Now, Mr. Chairman,
yes, Mr. Brace.
it sounds kind of hokey to me, though. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
so what if no one had anything to say about it? It should, here comes Tara. It should be,
should still be
all of
part
it.
of the proposal.
all of it should be in there. So why would they leave it out?
Mhm.
So nobody talks about it and we're all in agreement. It doesn't mean that it should be pulled out to be discussed.
Right,
It should all be there.
right.
I don't know. It just seems weird to me.
Well, it should be there in the place it's gonna be in the regulations, but I don't see it.
Right.
I'm going through, I don't see it in there. I'm looking some more.
Here we are back to 2 weeks ago, it seems, and I think all of us as a board kind of felt the same way as what you just described, Mr. Brace, and so we're just trying to be, trying to make sure all the ducks are in a row the way we had anticipated.
Well, I think that since town administration has said that, oh, it's in there, they said what they said. So if it turns out that it's not in there, when it's all done, we have them saying to us, nobody had anything to say about it. It's definitely in there. Everybody thinks it's a good idea. We have them saying that. So.
Yeah. Okay.
I would suggest, I'm sorry, I would suggest it's not in there at all. It's not, I just went through it.
I don't see it at all. It's not where, it's not in red.
No, it's not in red. And if you search for liverboard, it only has half a dozen references to definition, no liverboards at the town dock. The Airbnb and the liverboard, the insurance, all that has absolutely not in there.
I was kind of under the impression that Gibson's explanation was that it had been adopted that night.
Hmm.
But why is it
by
in
default?
But what's here is a complete rundown of the whole section of the town guidelines or whatever. So it should be in there if it's in there, because it's not where it was the day it was sort of kind of maybe agreed to. So it looks like it's not there. Maybe they'll stick it in later. I don't know.
It's actually a new section. It looks like they renamed 250 to 278. So they have the entire section 278 in there, but there's no mention at all about it.
Right.
So,
All right, who's able to attend the meeting tomorrow?
I can attend the meeting tomorrow.
All right, I'd like to say I'll be able to get there as well. I have to be out of town just for the day. I should be back on a 5 p.m. arrival.
should we ask Erica? I mean, just this is kind of get an email tonight. Maybe just get in front of it instead of waiting until the meeting tomorrow night. And she
Right.
could maybe say, "Oh, we did. You're right. We kept saying we were going to include that, and we didn't." And they could correct it for tomorrow night.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's because it's the public reading of it.
Right. Right.
I would suggest we ask Peter if he has time to send an email to her tomorrow and say that the
Right.
entire liverboard section is missing
Mhm.
from the agenda packet.
Okay.
Dave Bossy, can you give me any rundown? Was there anything new in the stakeholders meeting, or did they just explain what has been going on?
The stakeholders meeting was really focused strictly on the lottery is what it was. That was the biggest thing.
And there were no
Andy brought up-
changes made. They didn't agree to make any changes.
No, they were taking it back to discussion by the select board, which is probably what's highlighted in red is what Charlie went back and said, here's our changes that we think you guys asked for. And
Okay, but
Right.
do you think there's any difference between this version and the version from last month?
there could well be the stakeholder. I haven't read the details of the lottery because that's what all the discussion was about. And quite frankly, I wasn't that involved in it. I was more concerned about the liverboards and insurance.
And did the stakeholders generally accept the proposal, or were they against the proposal? What was the tenor of the meeting?
Oh, the lottery, I would say the lottery was acceptable. The way that we discussed it with half the slips becoming full-time slips. I think the big discussion was, do they be forced to give up moorings? I think that was the only, there were people that say, you know, maybe a third said they shouldn't have to give up moorings, 2/3 said they did. And it was left that, well, that's what the select board will discuss and decide. And this is the
Okay, 'cause-
valuable input they wanted. But the lottery was pretty well universally accepted. Right? Is
Okay.
that right, Andy? That's what I heard.
Yeah, that's how I remember it. Yeah.
And we accept it, and we support giving up moorings for the
We-
permanent
and-
spots.
And I
Just to
spoke to
make
that.
it clear,
right.
when I go to the meeting tomorrow, I'm gonna say that's what our board has agreed to.
Mhm.
Is that
That's
the
correct.
case?
That was exactly our position. Andy presented one part of it and I followed up with that because there was later discussion on the giving up. And I said that was part of our whole discussion, was that the reason we supported it is because it should make more slips and more moorings available to people to use, no matter how many they're making available.
And what,
Dave.
and remember the discussion that I think we voted on it, but I think the discussion too was it really probably will not affect that many people.
Right.
And that was also, that was mentioned, there was, right, absolutely, but the point being that, right, some people may get to be on the water that couldn't be on the water otherwise.
Right.
They wouldn't have the opportunity, right, nobody really know the number, and it probably isn't a huge number, but there was a lot of consensus that it was just a little greedy to keep a mooring and a slip, because you didn't have to worry about storms. They discussed, that was discussed, having to leave the dock because of a storm, that there were always moorings available out there. Nobody was going to force anybody off somebody else's mooring during a storm. So it was pretty well discussed.
Good.
So Andy, if you're on, you speak, and if I don't see you there, I will make whatever comments are necessary.
Okay.
And
good.
you'll speak to the liveaboards and the Airbnb also, because that's the missing piece.
Yeah,
Yep,
I'll
okay.
make sure that I understand that. So we'll
Great,
deal with
okay.
the slip. We'll accept the slip lottery proposal. We will say that we prefer to have the moorings released, and we also want to see the liveaboard provisions put in there as they were.
As we were assured.
And they were put in.
We were assured at the stakeholders flat out that it was included.
Okay.
Right.
Or at a minimum, they included in their vote. I mean,
Right. They could
maybe you
pencil
don't
it
have to
in.
have it in front of you on paper, but if they affirm that what they did the last time with the hocus pocus, that
Right.
it's now voted to move forward.
Codified, whatever. Yeah,
Codified, that's the word.
Good
Thank
point.
right.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Good.
All right.
Thanks, Tom.
But Tom, even if I'm there, if there's something to be said with the moorings and the slips, I'm going to leave that to you. All right.
Okay.
Because
Will do.
you're better versed at that, and if something needs to be said about the Airbnb liveaboard, I'll try to master that one. And if I don't get it right, feel free to butt in. All right. Tomorrow's
not
going to be a busy day, and my head's just been full of all kinds of different calls and issues coming up over these last 2 days. So,
Okay, and it's got to be at the end of the thing, so we'll be sitting around waiting for a long time.
yeah. So I'm sure I'll be able to be there if I'm home by 5:15. So,
Okay.
all right. But it would be great if you're there as well.
I'll also try to attend.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Tom. We'll back up out of old business to natural resources report. I see Tara here.
Hi guys, sorry I'm slightly delayed.
That's quite all right.
So I have I apologize to those that were at NSA last night, because it's probably gonna be an exact repeat of what I reported then. I do have a few small additions though. So it's recreational dive season, or scallop season started on Friday, and we have I think we had about 80 people out in Matticat on Friday. The numbers were really good on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And people were getting about half a bushel in an hour. And most of everything they were bringing in was legal. So that was good. The Thursday before, we had a meeting with DMF to just kind of verify that they were okay with us opening Little Neck to Warren's Landing, because previously it was closed for clams and other shellfish, but traditionally it is open for bay scallops and conch. It wasn't open last year because it was decided that it was going to be difficult to enforce with that water quality closure, which was pretty contentious, if you remember, with the fishermen and also with me. I didn't agree with it. So we wanted to make sure that it was going to be open. So we've added some educational outreach and oversight from our own staff that are out there on the beach for the recreational season to ensure that there's adequate coverage there, keeping an eye to make sure everybody is, understanding the rules that you cannot take anything except for bay scallops and conch out of that area. And we've added signage in English and Spanish there as well. So hopefully, that'll help keep that area open. The horse shed and Holbert Avenue is still closed for clams and other shellfish besides bay scallops. The DMF has said that they're waiting for those boats to get down to 20 or less, which that area is huge. It's called NT 2.6, and it covers the horse shed, Holbert Ave, the top of the mooring field to First Point. And there's a lot of boats and moorings in there, so it's pretty ridiculous that they expect it to be 20 boats or less to open it up. So that's a fight for another day. We wanted to make sure everything was good for bay scalloping. And then now we're working on discussing the lines that they're drawing and the buffers that are needed for the mooring field versus the shellfish. We're also getting them information on the types of moorings that are in the vicinity of the area. And everything that we can get them with pump out data and stuff like that to show them that we're being proactive. And I think that we're going to have a lot of meetings this winter with Sheila to discuss, just how many boats are in the anchorage and how it is going to affect scalloping moving forward, especially in October if people are, staying on the island longer and not removing their boats, because these new rules are going to prohibit shellfishing in a lot of areas if we don't address it. So it's something to consider and something that we are actively working on right now. We just completed our dive surveys last week for Nantucket Harbor. We did 40 dives in about 6 days. And the purpose of those dives is to evaluate the eelgrass habitat and also the different classifications of scallops that we find in the surveys. And it just gives us some long-term data that we can compare back to 2006 and tell how the harbor's changing and how the scallop populations might be changing as well. So that information has been collected and we're working on writing it up and comparing it to previous years. We also did a set of recreational snorkel surveys this year prior to the recreational season, and we swam all the way from the guard shack in Mattakit all the way to Eel Point doing snorkel surveys as a continuous line. So that was really interesting because usually we just jump in at one point and, make an assessment, but it's really interesting to see how everything changes as you go down the shoreline. So that gave us kind of a big picture of what's going on, especially in Mattakit with like some of the macroalgae and the lyngbia that we're getting reports on gumming up the push rakes and causing problems. Let's see, what else do I have? The hatchery is essentially shut down right now. We do have 7 of our outdoor tanks running with oyster spat on shell and oyster spat set on oyster castles, which are the big concrete Legos. And that project is with Nantucket Conservation Foundation, and those are set to be deployed in Pulpus Harbor next week. As soon as we verify that we have the Chapter 91 license, those will be going out for Medowie Creek area, and then we'll completely shut down and move into some more of our field assessments as we get closer to stranding season. Let's see, what else? We just hired a coastal systems technician. They're going to be tasked with the endangered species monitoring, which is mainly the birds, fertilizer enforcement, and working on CONCOM enforcement and oversight for that. Our department is currently going through a reorganization right now where the town has decided to add a sustainability arm to our department. So that's going to include moving some people over, like from Plus, we are getting the energy coordinator, we're getting the recycling coordinator from DPW, and we have Vince now as our coastal resiliency coordinator. Our department also has 2 positions available. One is an administrative assistant that's going to be posted shortly, and the other one is a conservation commission, I guess, I can't remember what the exact title is, but basically they'll be in charge of the Conservation Commission. And yeah, I think that's it for right now. Oh, Thais wanted me to tell you that they're going to be opening the ponds in October. The date is to be determined, but she would personally email you, Peter, and let you know when. And they will test the water before and after. And I think that is it. So if you have any questions, please let me know. I know it was a lot of information.
Thank you, Tara. I'd like to back up to about, what was it, maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago when Thais came in on your behalf. She gave a wonderful report. And I closed out the meeting without personally thanking her. And so on behalf of the board, thank you for sending Thais. She filled in your shoes very well and gave us a thorough report. And I'd also, on behalf of the board and on behalf of recreational and commercial scallopers, thank you for working proactively on this mooring field and shellfish closure issue with the DMF. When we're questioned, board members, be sure to let any recreational or commercial fishermen know that Natural Resources is stumping on their behalf to get these areas open, and to be able to explain what the issue is with DMF and their issue with having too many boats moored in these shellfish taking areas is what their concern is. They want to see less than 20 boats, I guess. So good work there, Tara, thank you. You mentioned last night and at NSA and also tonight with the Lingbia in Mattakit. And can you just specify for us, I mean, what's your professional opinion on the creation of the Lingbia? I know it's been explained before, and it's probably, mostly with having to do with nitrogen, but what are your thoughts on, what's the biggest issue, and how is there anything we can do to combat this? Does a lot of it have to do with stormwater runoff coming from, fertilizers or whatever else may be on the ground that's running off in major rain events? Just update us on your feelings on the creation of the Lingbia.
I think that there's a lot of research ongoing about this species. So I think it's just a combination of a lot of inputs going into the water related to nutrients. It's really hard to pinpoint exactly what it is, but you can kind of assess that through research to determine what the largest, factor might be in a given area. I was surprised to see it in Matticat Harbor. Like I said, we swam the entire shoreline and we've never done that before. So it was pretty shocking to see how much it, has covered the eelgrass close to shore. It's really bad up in the head of the harbor and in front of the field station as well. It's not attached to the sediment or anything. It just kind of sits on top. So it is easy to lift off, and that comes off in the winter with the wind and that sort of thing. And it comes off in dredges, whether the fishermen like it or not. One thing we saw is we did see a lot of, we've had a lot of late spawns this year. Everything happened like mid-August and September. So a lot of the spat that we've seen that were like 5 millimeter or less were on top of the Lingbia, which was on top of the eelgrass. So I'm not really sure, what the effects of the Lingbia are, with a bunch of little baby scallops attached, or, what happens if that just lifts and it blows in the winter and then they're lost. It's something that we took pictures and we documented in each area and we'll be looking into, but anytime you have like a macroalgae that is invasive and taking over, it's alarming for sure. Because there isn't an easy fix for it. So it's, something that we're going to compare to the previous years in these areas that we found it. And we've never done a survey in Matticat Harbor like we do in Nantucket Harbor. We had planned on doing it this year, but we didn't get the funding for it. So I'm hoping next year we can have a baseline of it so we can really document that Lingbia and see how it's changing over time, so that we can, try to make some proper adjustments to see if we can help the situation.
Thank you, Tara. Board members, questions for Tara? Anything, please? Tara, you mentioned last night that you noticed some nubs. Before I get to that, I was concerned just thinking that we had such a warm summer, a lot of more activity in the harbor as well. But as far as the temperature goes, have you, certainly you've opened some scallops. I'm always thinking, okay, it's so warm. Are they formed well inside? Are they, do they look firm and fresh, or are they kind of slunky? And was wondering if the climate continues the way it's been going these past few summers with lengthier moments of warmth, if we shouldn't be thinking in the future, if it continues, should the opening of the season be postponed for a week or two until some cooler temperatures arrive? I was told by some recreational scallopers that what they caught looked wonderful and fresh, and which was obviously good news to hear. Those were mostly people in Matticat. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see the information from the surveys, because just like visually looking at everything and writing down the information, it seemed to me that the predominant classification for both harbors were nubs, and mostly like pretty small undersized nubs, so less than 2.5 inches. They look like seed, except they're tall. So, people could confuse them for seed, but the one thing that sets them apart is when they're open, their gonad was bright orange this time of year still. So they're spawning later as well. So yeah, I don't know. There's lots of interesting things about it. If you push the season back, there could be a couple benefits. You could have 2 more weeks of growth going on those nubs that could make them harvestable. That's something that, I worry about, because even last year they were right on the line in a lot of places where they weren't going to be harvestable, and that makes it hard for enforcement. But yeah, as soon as we get that information, I definitely will relay it. We certainly saw plenty of classics and some pretty gnarly looking big scallops in different areas, but it seems like the nubs are surviving the winter, which is really great, because they're going into the winter like 2 millimeters, and they're surviving and they're becoming dominant, it seems like. So there could be some interesting thoughts that come out of how we're going to manage our fishery in the future, if that's going to be how it is.
Did you notice any seed close to shore anywhere that could be vulnerable if we get strong winds?
We have not found a ton of what we would consider true seed. So seed that's, nice and flat, usually like 25 millimeters or less. So we're still looking for that. We've been diving in channels and diving in places that we haven't been before. There are a couple of areas where we have seen these undersized nubs close to shore, particularly like Shimo Bend. There seems to be a pretty high concentration in there on the east part of Shimo Bend. So yeah, there are some areas that we have to go back and assess and then decide what we're going to do with those scallops, if anything.
I overheard one scalloper that was in Pocomo said they had poor luck finding anything, and somebody else responded saying the divers were out further and there were a good amount in deeper water, and this particular person was hoping for a breeze so they'd be blown up into the shallows, easier for the push rakers to get. And I thought, boy, a commercial fisherman doesn't want to hear that, and neither do you. With what you do. So but it was good to hear that the divers were doing better out in deeper water. So Mr. Sidlowski.
Just for some information, Didi went out on opening day to Pocomo, got 8 scallops, left them behind. But I do know a diver there, and he wasn't really impressed with what he was finding even deeper. So the Pocomo area didn't seem to be a great area this weekend.
Yeah, I think people, they like their spots and they go back to the same spot every year. That was, awesome the year before. And, scallops move around and every year is completely different. So, yeah, I mean, people got to be a little creative and go to a few different spots.
Somebody else have a question for Tara? Board members? Public comment on marine or natural resources? Not seeing or hearing any. Thank you, Tara. If you'd stick around for a bit, that would be great. I believe we've covered in old business the proposed amendments to Airbnb, the meeting October 6th tomorrow at the select board. Any more discussion there? Not seeing or hearing any. This being on our agenda for a long time here, excessive sand and scallops, dredging plan. Talking a bit with Mr. Franzuto about this last week. And Mr. Franzuto was able to get in touch with Steve McKenna, the Cape and Islands Director of the Massachusetts Office of Coastal Zone Management. He cannot make tonight's meeting, but will try to attend our next meeting. And I guess the reason for, we can kind of just keep this on our agenda and talk about it, but I'd like to hear what other towns may be accomplishing. And it sounds like every project that is done goes through Mr. McKenna. So he may be a wealth of information for us. Tara, I know you've seen this on our agenda for a long time as well. And I just, I can't stop thinking about that meeting where both Cormac and Jeff Carlson, were speaking about the eelgrass transplanting, that it really can't grow in thick layers of granular sand that is washed off our beaches over the years into the harbor. And if there's something, we could do, that can help our eelgrass come back in areas like this. Tara, if, with you doing these diving exercises now, are you capable of maybe identifying areas that just look like there's nothing but, heavy layers of sand, like Jeff had mentioned, the mooring handler saying, oh, I used to set a mooring here in 6 feet of water, now it's in 4 feet of water. I mean, if we've got 1 foot to 2 feet of granular sand that we'll never see eelgrass come back in, are there some areas you could identify, and be proactive in a way if a plan does come to fruition sometime in the future, that there'd be some areas that you'd be willing to say, hey, this would be a good spot for a test area to try this out. I know we've been mapping, or you've been mapping eelgrass along with others over the years. The eelgrass areas seem to diminish every year. And then to tie on to this, if it, who knows what's going to happen with a coastal resiliency plan, but if beach nourishment is necessary, this could possibly be a twofold project that benefits 2 different things. Hopefully, the health of our harbor and eelgrass beds, and possibly some replenishment for coastal resiliency out of the same project. Just a thought process I've been banging around in my head for quite some time now, as you all know.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Franzuto.
Yeah, just so the board knows, when the chairman and I talked about this, we were talking about projects on the vineyard and dredging projects that deal strictly with water quality and shellfish. So like I said, explained to him, McKenna has to approve all these projects, and he's familiar with some of these water quality and shellfish projects. So rather than try to contact individual communities, McKenna can speak to that. So if you have ideas, he couldn't be here tonight, but if he'll be here next Tuesday or a week, 2 weeks. If you have ideas, that'll be the time, because the thing about, as I explained to the chairman, he approves them or disapproves them based on, science, and he's done it for 30 years. So he's a wealth of knowledge. So if we come up with some ideas, he can tell us right off the bat whether it's been tried, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. And it's kind of like like a clearinghouse. So he could talk to all the Cape and Islands towns. So anyway, he'll be here in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Dave. Yes, Tara.
I just wanted to say, I forgot to mention this, but we, on the 22nd, we are kind of trying to put together what was originally the Marine Research Collaborative. So we're meeting with the Land Council, we're meeting with NCF, we're meeting with the UMass, Yvonne from UMass, and we're trying to get all of our eelgrass information in our projects kind of compiled, and we want to all get on the same page for the following year so that we aren't being redundant, and we're kind of pull together and discuss what we each want to do and how we can work together, and then also talk about ways that we can get it funded as like a collaborative group.
Can you, the Land Council and who else?
Right now it's the Land Council, NRD, Nantucket Conservation Foundation, and the UMass Field Station.
Oh, there's a meeting of the minds. The Marine Research Council. I like that. Thank you, Tara.
You're welcome.
Board members.
Mr. Chairman.
Ginger, please.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah. I don't know what's in the file, or if it contains student research or anything of that nature, but the Mariah Mitchell has supposedly some of the biodiversity library, which should include some of the projects that have been, done over the years as part of the biodiversity initiative. So I'll take a look in there. I'll be in there this weekend, and I can take a look then and see if there's anything useful. It might be redundant, but it might be something that isn't in the other files.
Thank you, Ginger. That only makes sense that Mariah Mitchell would kind of round out that whole group. Is that meeting October 22nd?
It's not an advertised meeting. We were just trying to have the initial brainstorming with it before we included all of the island entities, I guess. So yeah, I imagine, we definitely will include Mariah Mitchell, Val Hall, and all the other relevant committees or organizations with it. I think we are just trying to kind of draw out exactly what we were trying to accomplish before we had too many people involved.
Understood. Well, keep us informed on that. Thank you, Tara.
Yep.
Board members, anybody else comments on this subject? Keep in mind what Mr. Franzuto said. If you have any thoughts or ideas to add, keep them in mind for our next meeting. We'll move forward. Health of the harbors, excessive lawn fertilizer use. Any updates or discussion for tonight? Not seeing or hearing any. FDA shellfish taking prohibition in the mooring fields. Is this something different than DMF and what you were discussing earlier, Tara?
I think the only thing that I would have to add to that, I think it's the same thing, is that if you are observed scalloping in those closed areas, which are open to scalloping now, and you have a cohog, it will be confiscated. So, because there's no way to prove where that cohog came from, even if you were somewhere else. So if you are observed scalloping in like Little Neck to Warren's Landing or in the horse shed, you just can't have any bycatch.
Okay, thank you. Board members?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brace, please.
could a member of the public just joined the meeting? His name is Ken. Could you tell this person to put his full name up so we know who it is?
Well, I don't know how to do that, but it's Ken Kuntz.
So Ken, you go down and click on your name, and it will say at the very bottom of that, rename, and you click on rename, and then you can type your name in.
Well, I don't see anything on the bottom, but I'll work on it. Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kuntz. Served on a term here on the board. Thanks for joining us, Ken.
Sure, certainly.
All right, water quality testing update, boat holding tank, dye tablet distribution. Tara, at the meeting that was held at the yacht club, the state of the harbor, Sheila had mentioned, that the land council funded, I believe the land council funded for dye tabs. We were curious if she implemented that program this summer. Would you know anything about that at all? Were they used during this season, or are they planning ahead for next season with that?
So that was news to me when I heard it at that presentation. So I have not heard anything since then, but I also have not inquired about it.
Okay. understandable. It was news to us as well, and hopefully we'll hear from Sheila on that in the near future. Anything on water quality testing? Aside from the ponds you mentioned earlier?
No, except that we're done with our seasonal water quality testing. And then as far as the mooring fields go and that conversation, the DMF told us to look into programs that Block Island is doing with, and also Chatham, I guess, where they lock the heads of the boats in order to keep some shellfishing areas open. So that's something that we're gonna just kind of investigate and see what other communities are doing.
All right, thank you, Tara. Board members, anything to add on this subject? Not seeing or hearing any. Under new business, Coastal Resiliency Advisory Board update. Before I hand this over to Mr. Brace, I'm sure you've all seen some of the suggestions given by the Arcadis Group, front page news and Thursday's newspaper. I think it would be wise for our board to be looking closely at this. Some of these suggestions, of course, are quite extreme. The mapping of a, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it a dike, because I don't have the newspaper in front of me of what they call it, going from Brant Point and around to the Great Harbor Yacht Club area, and then of course it accommodating some projected some more a small marina in the very close proximity of Tara's laboratory. I can't imagine that would be, or I would imagine it would more so be frowned upon by many. I thought, boy, this is quite an extreme idea. So I'm just wondering, if we, as a board, should come together with some thoughts and prepare a statement. They're certainly looking for public input. I believe the time is now for public input. Mr. Brace can fill us in more on that, but it would be neat to see a direction taken that does things in a manner that we can all kind of agree upon and that we all may feel is effective, and also not disturbing the flow of the way things work in the harbor right now. I imagine if we choked things down and only had a set of gates to come through for boating, that some type of studying on how that would affect the flow, the natural flow that takes place now, would have on our harbor water quality. So, Tara, I imagine you would have an opinion on this as well. Will you be preparing any statements at a certain
Mr. Chairman,
time?
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
Mr. Brace.
go
ahead.
Let me just.
Yeah.
So today was the deadline for comments on the draft plan.
Oh.
And
right.
And at our meeting today, we decided that we would extend that to the 11th. So if anything's coming out of this board, it'll be individuals making comments,
All right.
written comments, or showing up at the meeting on the 11th and making comments.
Okay.
You also need to know that, and you're going to hear every member of the committee trying to get this, to repeat this, to make sure that everyone understands that, like the last iteration of the harbor plan, these are recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
These are just what they see, what they think will work based on the current data. Some of us won't even be alive when they're thinking of doing the big thing in the middle of the harbor. And, it may be that CO2 will be gone by then, and water quality won't be a problem because the ocean will be breaking on that thing and we're going to need it. So these are just ideas that their best guess will help Nantucket. These are, you know, I know what's going to happen on Facebook. People are going to look at this and take the plan as written in stone and that all this stuff is going to happen. That's not true. These are recommendations and you should take them as such. And as outlandish as they seem to a lot of people, they're just recommendations. They don't happen unless lots of study by the town and town meeting votes and tons of meetings and you know, these are just recommendations. So
All right. Understood.
Okay.
Mr. Franzuto.
To your point about water quality and the circulation, Peter and I talked about this. If you have that wall with only one opening, the circulation in the harbor is clockwise. So the good circulation that you have now that goes by the creeks, by the town pier, through the bulkheads at the boat basin that were designed to allow the tide to go through there. They were specifically designed that way. If you have one opening in that bulkhead, my point is you have to have two openings in that bulkhead. You have to have one where the tide can come in and flush that area and then go back out. Otherwise, you're going to have a stinking cesspool behind that bulkhead. And I certainly appreciate what you're saying, Peter, about them being recommendations. And I'm sure when we did the harbor plans and the shellfish plans, people thought some of the stuff that we came up with are pretty crazy too. But that's the one that jumped out at me. And I do have a phone call into their Arcadius guy just to reiterate what I just said. But something simple like that. And then my other thing that I have to say is to Peter's point about probably most of us won't be alive, is the funding and permitting for something like that structure. I don't know where you come up with that $10 million unless the Corps of Engineers took it on, which is how
Mr.
the
Chairman.
hurricane barrier in New Bedford got built.
Mr. Brace.
You know, at that point, which might even be as far out as, I can't remember, 50 years or whatever it is, you know, we may not even care about water quality. If CO2 is fragmented, if the haulover is gone, you know,
Yeah.
you
No, you're right.
can't really say that there'll be a shellfish industry at that time. It may be all about protecting the downtown as much as possible because the open ocean will be breaking
Right.
on that seawall.
Right.
So
Yeah, the focus may be just, and when the more I read it and the more I look at it, that's, I think, a way, what people need to understand, that's to protect the downtown area. And all the rest of the stuff that we do now and hope we can do in the future is, you're right, it's probably going to be gone, unfortunately. But
and it's long term. It's a long term look,
right.
And it's a look based on, you know, what scientists think now is going to be sea level rise conservatively, and it could change a whole lot. And I mean, it's just the thing to focus on, you know, are the near term and short term things that we can do, the nature-based things, you know, just it's going to help everybody if we all read the document and come up with comments and get those comments in by the 11th. And I think Vince said by 12 a.m. in the morning on the 11th, you know, 12 a.m. in the morning, whatever. They only wanted a week. It has to do with how much money that they have to, you know, a cost overrun, and Arcadis is on a schedule, but there were lots of people at the meeting on the board who said, you know, we need more time. So just take the time to look at it. And when you're looking at it, you know, look at it with the eyes of you as a member of this board, so that when you're speaking, you're speaking on our behalf and our interests, and you may have your own, but yeah.
That's good, Peter. Thank you. The 11th is Columbus Day, which is just 6 days away. So thank you for that. Boy, time's just flying by.
But, I want to just add, Dave, don't hold back about it being a stinking cesspool. What I'm saying is, tell them that. I'm not telling you to not say that. I'm just saying,
Right.
I'm giving you the bigger picture. Tell them that from your perspective, because you were the harbor master,
Right.
So
When I continued to look at it and everything, I really had to hold myself. I don't know what the right, but I had to project that this is 50 years down the road, and what we're trying to do at that point in time is probably save the downtown area.
right.
So all the discussions about scalloping and water quality and water flow and why we don't build solid filled piers and all those arguments are and like you said, Peter, if the haulover is gone and code 2 is gone, we got a lot bigger issues than the ones that we're talking about today.
Well, parts of the plan, talk about offshore sand reclamation and building up weak areas of our shoreline. They mentioned Cotu. They mentioned some South Shore areas as well. And if that's part of the plan to be building dunes, then you would think, okay, we're trying to save Cotu, we're trying to save the haulover,
Right.
and the surge barrier would make more sense to go simply from Brant Point to Cotu Point, something like that. But I don't want to sit here and try to make a plan tonight. I just, as Peter said, let's go, if somebody has something, go in as individuals, but thinking of it as being a member of this board as well. So, which is the thoughts on my mind. I'm concerned for our fishery. I'm concerned for the longevity of our harbor. But it is a big harbor. It's a large area to protect. So when you think about, wow, how do we get all this sand, out of the Cod of the Bay or off of the eastern shore to prop up Cotu and the haulover area? That's a major production. So the deadline may be the 11th, but I think discussion will continue in the future for sure. So as Peter said, they're all just suggestions. So it's taking action is a step that it's going to take a lot longer. Board members, Tara, anything you wanted to add at this point on this, or?
Oh, never mind.
Okay. Public questions or comment? I'd like to mention the Scallops Ball is coming up. There are tickets available. It sounds like a lot of the activities will be outside to try to make it a safe event. Support the NSA by going to the Scallops Ball. Another previous board member, Joe LaPuma, texted me earlier. He was concerned about what the protocol was for masks and vaccinations. And they've sent all of that out now. It's pretty much, whatever is required by the health department. It will be masked indoors when you're seated. You don't have to be masked. So pretty much the same event. excuse me, I was just happy to hear from Mr. LaPuma. He was a wonderful contribution for a term along with Mr. Kuntz. And be nice to see Mr. LaPuma at the ball. Anything anybody wants to add about tonight's meeting or recap or items for our next meeting? I don't have the dates in front. Our next meeting is October 19th. If there's nothing else for tonight, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, Mr. Chairman, this is Ginger.
Thank you, Ginger. David Bossy, his motion to adjourn tonight's meeting, seconded by Ginger Andrews. All in favor, Peter Brace,
Aye.
Dave Franzuto,
Aye.
Tom Sidlowski.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
All right.
See y'all.
Peace.
Good night.
Peace out.
Peace out.